From the Silver Creek Studios, I'm Jared, and this is the BFIBs Almanac. On this episode, we're going to discuss the spring opener of 2019, which was an 11-1 win over Miami. We're also going to get into Game 2, which was not so good. We're going to discuss briefly the Jose Martinez contract extension and a potential racism controversy being lobbed at the president of baseball operations for the St. Louis Cardinals. So all that and more on this episode of the BFIBs Almanac. But first, I'd like to invite you to get a hold of the show at BFIBs Almanac on Twitter and Instagram. You can email us, bfibsalmanac@gmail.com, and you can find us on Twitter, BFIBs Almanac Podcast. All right, let's dive in. So we had the first game of spring training, which was a resounding success, an 11-1 win over the Miami Marlins. Miles Mikolas was the starting pitcher, and he retired all 6 batters with no walks and 1 strikeout. Now, he gave way in the 3rd inning to Jack Flaherty, who gave up 1 run in 1 innings pitched, and it was a leadoff double. He allowed that guy to steal 3rd, and then gave up an RBI. So not a great outing by Flaherty, but not bad either. He only had the 1 inning. Some of the other highlights of the game were Tommy Lane is a lefty pitcher from St. Louis, 34 years old, who obviously, late into his professional career is trying to get the call up, and he struck out the side, which was pretty impressive to see. We could definitely use more left-handed pitching, quality left-handed pitching. We got to see Ryan Helsley. He is the fireballer down in Memphis. He retired all 6 batters he faced, 3 strikeouts, and reached 100 miles an hour on the gun. So he is part of that Triple H group of Hicks, Hudson, and Helsley. Some of the prized pitchers coming up. And so we've already seen Hicks. We've seen a little bit of Hudson. And I think fans are going to be excited to see Helsley too. So I know I am. We also got to see Ramon Urias and Max Schrock both hit 3-run homers. Urias is a signed player from the Mexican League who actually did really well in the Mexican League, but you never know how that's going to translate to the big leagues. But so far, he has done well in the minors, and he has done well in his early spring training debut. And Max Schrock, if you recall, is the player that we signed or traded from the A's in the Steven Piscotty trade. Now, the other name we got from that is Jairo Munoz. So we all saw Munoz quite a bit last season. We didn't get to see Schrock because he was injured, but he was really the centerpiece of that trade as far, as from our perspective. And Munoz was sort of the throw-in piece. So hopefully we do get to see more of Schrock this year. And he started off strong with a 3-for-4 outing, I believe, including that 3-run homer in the first game. So exciting to see. Drew Robinson, which is the left-handed utility guy that we got from the Rangers for Patrick Wisdom. He was 2-for-4 with an RBI and 2 runs scored. The catcher, Andrew Kisner, was 2-for-3 with 1 run scored. And he and Robinson both doubled as well as Shrek. And last but not least, Jerko and Bader were the only starters besides Kisner to get a hit. So that is the one takeaway that would be a negative out of all this. All this damage, this 11 runs that we scored, was really all from the sort of bench guys, the backup players, the young ones. So Jerko and Bader each had hits, as well as Kisner's double, but not a lot showing from some of the big names. It's the first game of spring training. It's okay. Nobody's panicking. But, if you had to take away something negative from that game, that's what it would be. Now, Game 2, Sunday's game, was a completely different story. It was a 12-2 loss to the Nationals. 11 walks were issued by Cardinals pitchers. Waka was the starter. He was okay. Now, if you recall, this is the first time he's pitched for the Cardinals since June of last summer. So he's been battling injuries. He seems to be healthy. But like I said, he had an okay outing. 1 hit, 1 walk, 1 strikeout, 1 earned run. And really, I believe that earned run maybe could have been unearned. Fowler probably should have made the play, but the run was charged to Waka. So not a bad outing. One of the big names we've talked about in the past, and a guy that I'm kind of excited to see more from, is Genesis Cabrera. This is the guy who's described as a left-handed Carlos Martinez. He had his debut and was pretty awful. A lot of walks, a lot of earned runs, hard hit balls, gave up a home run, I believe, on his first pitch. Just overall not good. Again, it's early spring training. Nobody's saying that this is how he's going to be from now on, but not the debut that he was hoping for, not the debut that fans were hoping for. So we'll see how he does next time out. He'll get lots of chances. Finally, in that game, there was a lot of bad stuff, but the only other thing I wanted to bring up was Tyler O'Neill had his first home run of spring. It was an opposite field shot. He felt pretty confident about it. Ball looked good going out. So nice to see him get going. I'm sure he's going to get a lot of chances, and I'm fairly confident he's going to be, go up to St. Louis with the team. But we'll see. All right. So one thing that was kind of interesting over the weekend was Jose Martinez signed a 2-year contract extension. Now, I wrote down extension in quotes. It's kind of a confusing situation with his contract. So I'll try to explain it briefly. 2019, this season, is the last pre-arbitration year for him. If you recall, young prospect-controlled players have 6 years of control for the team. The first 3 are pre-arbitration, so they get paid basically the league minimum. Now, the team can offer them more money if they want to, but generally they don't. So you generally get the league minimum salary, about $500,000 for the first 3 years. And after that, you become arbitration eligible, which means if you and the team don't agree on a salary increase, then an arbiter will decide what your salary will be. And it generally falls about halfway between what the teams, offer and what the player offers. But, that's based on your performance, and it's based on the rest of the league and what the guys in your position and how many years of service get and all that stuff. So he is in the last year of arbitration, and he's got 3 more years of arbitration coming up. But what they did instead was the Cardinals offered him a $3.25 million contract for 2 seasons. So it covers this year and the first year of his arbitration eligible years. And I believe that amount covers a signing bonus and also has some performance incentives built into that. So it's possible he might not see all of that $3.25 million, but, chances are he probably will. So I guess apparently the reason for this, it's not totally uncommon. In fact, the Cardinals often sign guys to extensions when they're still under team control. But generally, you don't see it with a short-term extension like this that doesn't even cover all of the years of arbitration. But apparently what the situation was I don't know if his agent brought it to the team or this other team approached the Cardinals with it or what, but there was an offer that came up for Martinez to play in Japan, which would be for a significant pay increase from the minimum salary that he was getting here. And I think that would have been maybe a tough decision for him. But rather than force him to make that decision, the Cardinals stepped up and said, we want to keep you here, and we realize it's a financial decision you have to make. So here you go. Here's a contract that will pay you, the millions that you could get over there, and kind of do right by him. He's been a really good hitter for us for the last couple seasons. I think they expect him to continue being one of our better hitters, and they tried to pay him accordingly. So I think it's only for this 2 years, so my guess would be they will offer him another extension at the end of that to buy out the next 2 arbitration years after this one. But you never know. I think they're just sort of seeing how this plays out. He might underperform, and then those arbitration years wouldn't actually get him a huge raise, so there wouldn't be a lot of incentive for them to buy out those years. But if he hits like crazy and becomes the starter and is this great hitter for us, then he would get a big jump in arbitration, and they might want to buy that out. So we'll see how that plays out. So it's kind of interesting with him. The other issue, or not issue, but facet of this whole deal was that, we've talked about some of the changes coming in across baseball, one of which is the designated hitter in the National League. And I think if that is to happen, maybe even as soon as next season, he could definitely fill that role for us. Now, we also talked about in one of our episodes that part of why they had trouble trading him was because he doesn't fit that prototypical DH role. But since they've already got him, they've got him affordably. I think if we did have to field a DH every game, he could definitely fill that role for us. So that's kind of nice. Good for him. He's going to make a little bit of extra money and not have to worry as much about feeding his family. So next up, we got Miles Mikolas was officially named the opening day starter up in Milwaukee. I think that was fairly, I don't know about obvious, but he was our best pitcher last year. I think most people expect him to be our best pitcher this year. I suppose you could have argued maybe Carlos Martinez would have fit that role. And since his status is up in the air with his shoulder fatigue and everything, I think they just wanted to make it official, and they did. Schilt named Mikolas the starting opening day starter in Milwaukee. So good for him. It's always nice to kind of know that and have that crown in your that jewel in your crown, so to speak. So excited to see what Mikolas does for us this year. He already started off good in spring training, and hopefully he keeps it up. So the last thing I have to talk about is kind of an interesting controversy that came up over the weekend. Baseball Prospectus has their Baseball Prospectus annual publication where they kind of break down each team and each player, and they give a little description of what they did before and what they expect to do this year and their stats and all this stuff, right? Baseball Prospectus is one of these analysis websites and companies. So in their most recent annual, they had some comments about Dexter Fowler in his profile. So let me pull that up here and kind of show you I'm going to read this here. So bear with me. It's not too long, but I'm going to read you first what their comments were. The Cardinals' decision to move Fowler to right field during the winter of 2017-18 was fraught with risk. Fowler's weaknesses as a center fielder, a lack of confidence in charging ground ball hits, a weak arm, could only be exacerbated by that change. Asking him to learn new angles and still cover an outfield spot didn't reduce the risk of injury to his lanky, sometimes fragile frame the way a transition to first base might have. Most importantly, however, the move sent a clear message to Fowler. 1 year into a 5-year deal, he was being demoted and deprioritized. He also lost his place at the top of the batting order, forcing him to alter his approach at the plate. He tried to do so. He failed. Then, amid a painful season for a player with a sterling reputation for clubhouse citizenship, Cardinals president John Mozeliak piled on, wielding harsh and implicitly racist remarks. I'm going to read that again. Mozeliak piled on, wielding harsh and implicitly racist remarks about Fowler's effort and focus. Fowler was unable to make the mental and physical adjustments necessary to succeed, but few players in recent memory have been more unfairly mistreated and misunderstood by their own team. So, I doubled up on the emphasis there. The implicitly racist remarks by Mozeliak about Fowler's effort and focus. When I first heard about that, I thought I had no idea what they were talking about. I couldn't remember anything that Mozeliak had ever said that seemed racist. I don't remember it being a story about anything racist. This was all news to me. So I was very confused by this and interested to see where it goes. So apparently over the weekend, Baseball Prospectus issued an apology of sorts to the Cardinals and to Mozeliak, and tried to explain what they meant by this description and why they didn't take it out when they were editing this annual. So part of the reason they claim is that this was written back in the fall when Fowler had recently made some comments responding to Mozeliak's comments, and this was all basically a fresher story. Since then, according to BP, Fowler and Mozeliak have put this behind them and kind of gotten over it, but it doesn't really explain why they said that. But I want to read for you Mozeliak's actual comments. So this is, again, a little bit wordy, but bear with me here. So this is what he had said that caused them to make this racist accusation. Quote, "It's been a frustrating year for everybody involved." Let me back up. This was when asked directly about Fowler's performance and the year he was having last year. "It's been a frustrating year for everybody involved. Here's a guy who wants to go out and play well. I think he would tell you it's hard to do that when you're not playing on a consistent basis. But I've also had a lot of people come up to me and question his effort and his energy level. You know, those are things that I can't defend. What I can defend is trying to create opportunities for him, but not if it's at the expense of someone who's out there hustling and playing hard. And really, I think everyone just needs to take a hard look in the mirror and decide what they want that next chapter to look like. And in Dexter's case, maybe taking a brief timeout, trying to reassess himself, and then give him a chance for a strong second half is probably what's best for everybody. I'm hopeful to touch base with him in the near future and decide what makes the most sense, but clearly he's not playing at the level we had hoped." End quote. So, did you hear anything in there that sounded racist, implicitly racist? I didn't hear or read or see anything that seems racist to me. So, Mozeliak did come out later and amend his statement, so to speak. And apparently part of what he changed was he said that Fowler has a different approach with how he deals with stuff. I know Dex is working. And there was a longer statement to that. But Dexter Fowler, and some people took issue with Mozeliak's classification of his effort level and that he wasn't trying hard enough or playing hard enough or whatever. Again, I don't see how that's a racist thing to say, but I guess if you're looking for it to be, you could see that. Now, I personally have questioned Fowler's effort several times. The way he looks, I'm not saying he for sure isn't giving 100%, but it looks like he's not. Particularly when he catches fly balls at his waist. I hate the look of that. And I've said before, someday he's going to pop fly and he's going to look like an idiot. And he's done it. And he looks like an idiot. And he looks like he's not trying his hardest when he catches a pop fly at his waist. Now, he gave some answer about how that's how he grew up, playing catch with his dad, and he's used to catching down low and whatever. I don't know. But it doesn't look good. I think he doesn't look like he's running as hard as he can when he's running. Now, he's big and tall and lanky, and a lot of times guys like that don't look like they're sprinting, even if they're running as hard as they can. He just kind of has that lackadaisical look to him. Now, nobody's said, well, I mean, they did, Mozeliak, and apparently he said this is not him questioning it. Fans have come up to him or other people and questioned Fowler's effort level. So he's saying that's, not something he can defend. But I don't know. But Baseball Perspective described this coded language that's attached to minorities, where fans in general accuse minorities of not hustling and not working hard and not being like what they would describe as that gritty white guy, right? The small, gritty white player who has to work really hard and runs out every ground ball and all that stuff. And that fans appreciate that and they don't appreciate the level of minorities. Now, I have heard that term, the gritty, tough white guy, but it's almost not a joke. And it's almost a negative thing, but it's used in terms of a player who maybe isn't as athletically gifted, isn't as fast, doesn't throw as hard, and has to bust their butt in order to succeed and in order to hold their own against all these other guys who are much more athletically inclined. So I guess that gets laid on white guys more. I don't look at that as a racial thing, but I do think there are certain players of all races who sometimes look like they're not hustling. I remember Carlos Beltran was that way. When he would sprint and run to get to a fly ball, he was so graceful and so smooth with the way he moved. It didn't look like he was running hard, but he really was. He was covering a lot of ground very fast. He just didn't look like it. But that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. As long as he's covering ground as fast as anybody else would be, whatever, however he looks, he just looks smooth doing it. There are some guys who look like they're not hustling, and maybe they actually aren't. I think Dexter Fowler falls into that category, and Starlin Castro of the Marlins, he definitely falls into that category because I think he's not hustling. He was one of those guys on the Cubs, I remember all the time, just standing back, leaning to one side. He's fishing with his seeds in his pocket and just kind of looking around like he didn't care. And, he made a bunch of errors. He was this gifted shortstop, but he made a lot of mistakes, and I think it's because his effort level wasn't there. And, of course, he got traded because of that, I think. And then there's guys like a Colby Rasmus who didn't always look like they were hustling and also maybe just weren't. But you're kind of on the fence. Like maybe I think he was one of those guys that was smooth with his sprinting in the outfield, kind of like a Beltran. He always had a effortless swing, but you also got the impression that maybe he just had things given to him all the time and he didn't work as hard for it. So it's kind of hard to say. But again, we're talking white guys, black guys, Latino guys. I'm not labeling any particular race as not working hard. I mean, there's all kinds of guys. Fans want to see players hustle. Curtis Granderson comes to mind. I remember just seeing him hitting triples for the Tigers and just busting his tail around the bases, diving in head first, always playing the game hard, always throwing hard, always running fast. Harrison Bader, same way. That guy is just sprinting, working hard all the time. Billy Hamilton of the Reds, one of the fastest base stealers we've seen. He's always hustling in the outfield and on the bases. But do I think of one of them as working harder than the other because of their race? No. I've never really heard anybody determine the effort level of certain players or say that they're not working hard because, oh, well, he's just a Latino player. Oh, he's just a black guy or whatever. That's never popped into my head. So to see Baseball Prospectus, a respected, widely read publication, make a comment like that about the president of a team just seems really, really odd to me and surprising. They kind of tried to back off and apologize, but even their apology wasn't really an apology. It was one of those, well, we couldn't clarify our statement in enough words, so we probably shouldn't have said it like that without having more space to explain ourselves. Just like Mozeliak probably shouldn't have said it without more room to explain himself in the first place. They weren't apologizing. They weren't backing off of what they said. They just said they didn't explain it very well. And I don't think there's anything to explain. I think they made a racist assumption about the way players are treated and didn't want to back off. So I don't know. I thought that was a little interesting. I'll be curious to see how that plays out moving forward. Maybe this is a dead issue and it won't get talked about again, but I wouldn't be surprised if Mozeliak has to address it, and maybe even Fowler and Baseball Prospectus, and who knows. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on that. But anyway, that's all I have for this episode. I just wanted to kind of recap the weekend, this exciting time of games finally starting. We're getting to see what these guys are doing. Been a little disappointed with the starters, Goldschmidt and Fowler and Carpenter, and these, most of the starters haven't really done much yet, performance-wise. A lot of offers out there, but we'll see. They'll pick it up, I'm sure. So we'll keep an eye on that. And until next time, I'm Jared, and this is the BFIBs Almanac.